exciting session ahead of you. Looking ahead, as 2023 comes to a close, looking ahead to next year and some of the exciting developments or tech developments that we're predicting are going to happen. We've got a very special guest with us today. I'll let him introduce himself in just a moment. But just a reminder, this is an open session. We'd love to hear your questions as we go. At any point, you can submit those using the Q&A feature here in Zoom, and we'll pick those up towards the end of the session. For those I haven't met before, my name is Nick. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Edifai. I'm very, like I said, excited about today's session. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Niall to give us his trend predictions. Niall, over to you.
Thanks very much, Nick. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Very nice to meet you. My name is Niall McKinney. I'm one of the co-founders of Edifai. I'll give you a really quick bit of background to me, just so it gives you a sense of kind of where I'm coming from, and then it'll help me introduce kind of on the basis on which I've selected these trends. So I've just spent 2.5 years working in AI in a company called Black Crow. So Black Crow is a Series A funded business focused on providing AI software to e-commerce businesses. We work with about 500 companies, including some of kind of the leading e-commerce businesses in the world. And I'll talk a bit more about them later. I was the chief growth officer there. Before that, I worked both as a client, so I ended up as the CMO of lastminute.com and Travelocity. And then I set up an education business in the digital kind of transformation phase, working with people like Google, Tencent, Twitter to create training for their clients, as well as lots of agency and client-side organizations who are looking at how to integrate digital into their marketing. So now it seems like there's a similar challenge ahead with AI. How do we integrate AI into what we do quickly? And so I'm working with Nick to help put together some solutions for people to do that. And our company is called Edifai. I'll talk a bit more about this at the end. I won't do a big sales pitch to you now, but Edifai looks across an organization and helps people understand what they need to do to move faster with AI and also move kind of in the right way with AI. And our biggest focus is on people, but also on culture. So how do you give people the skills that they need to be able to integrate AI into what they do? How do you share best practice and make sure that you're kind of at the cutting edge and not a laggard when it comes to using AI in your business? So when we think about the trends that we're talking about today, I'm not looking at very, very granular things. So today is not about kind of best practice on how to do creative optimization with AI, or best practice when it comes to how do you structure your data lake. So I'm not looking at very, very granular things. I'm trying to think a bit bigger, think a little bit further ahead, and think about the trends which are going to shape 2024, as opposed to very, very hands-on practical things. But I'm going to touch on those a bit in those two smaller trends. So we're going to talk about 5 things overall. 1, the race for data and the compute to use it. 2, Gen AI traction in enterprise. So enterprises, in our experience, have been a bit slower to embrace Gen AI. So is that going to change in 2024, and how is it going to change? We're going to talk a bit about e-commerce and how e-commerce is being rebooted by first-party data, predictive AI, and Gen AI. And then 2 smaller trends at the end, which are a little bit more on the practical side. So the consumerization of advanced production capabilities in the creative world, and the acceleration of social platforms in commerce driven by Gen AI. We're going to run for about 35-40 minutes. It's great to have you with us today. Appreciate your time. As Nick said, if you have questions, fire them into the Q&A as we go. Nick will be manning the Q&A and he'll interrupt me with any juicy questions. Otherwise, I'll pause from time to time and we'll come to those questions for sure at the end. All right, so let's get started with one big juicy trend for 2024, and that's about the race for data. So it's a good place to start with a quote from Jensen Huang, the founder and CEO of NVIDIA, now one of the richest men in the world. So he obviously knows quite a lot about what's happening in this world of Gen AI, as he owns the chip company that's helping almost everybody compute it. So he said a couple of months ago, enterprise data is a goldmine for generative AI. So let's unpack that a bit, because I think this is a really important trend and a big strategic priority for people in 2024. So if we think about the initial land grab for data, so we think about people building LLM models. So people like OpenAI, people like Google, people like Facebook. And that initial land grab was really done by them because other people hadn't perhaps realized the potential of Gen AI. And it was really focused on text. Now, obviously, clearly that's now expanded much more broadly as more people have come into the market. And we're moving way beyond text right now. And we can see this land grab expanding into other types of data, not just by the big five, but by everybody. And we'll talk about why that is in a second. So you can see Google doing a deal with Universal Music so that you can start thinking about using AI to create songs. We can see Adobe trying to sort out kind of the legal mechanics of collecting data by paying bonuses to creatives who agree to let their designs be part of their training models. And then we can see enterprises in particular trying to identify where do we have proprietary data that can give us a competitive edge? Because clearly one of the issues here is differentiation. If everyone's training their models on the same data and everyone's using roughly the same approaches to those models, how are you going to try and get a competitive outcome, something that shows that you are different? So we can see, for example, banks are scrambling to capture voice data on trading floors, believing that that voice data can give them a competitive advantage in terms of analyzing market trends. We can see other companies finding ways of structuring and then leveraging voice data from customer service calls so that can then feed into their models or their fine-tuning for their customer service models. So this is a massive area of kind of corporate focus. And just to pull that down onto kind of a more individual and specific level. So I just mentioned I've been working with Black Crow. We use Gong. So sort of give you kind of one example of like, how do you find that proprietary data, even at a very basic level? So does anyone else here use Gong? I don't know. It's absolutely invaluable for me as a chief growth officer. So what Gong does, if you haven't used it, it basically records every call that your customer success team makes, that your sales team makes, and it enables you to transcribe all of those calls, and then it applies AI to that talk track. So it can identify keywords. I can launch a new product, or I can launch a new way of selling a product. I can train the sales team in that. And then I can get Gong to flag to me where a sales team member is using an old talk track or using language they shouldn't be using, or who is using it and where it's being successful. It provides some absolutely fantastic analytics as well. So, every company needs to identify where is my proprietary data that can help me do my job? And even better, where's my proprietary data that can help me create a differentiated and better service? And I know we've got quite a lot of people here from agencies. So for agencies, this really works in two ways. You should be thinking as an agency, where is our proprietary data? How can that proprietary data give us a competitive advantage and how can we leverage it? And then the second thing is, do we have a role here to help our clients identify their proprietary marketing data, or even more broadly, proprietary enterprise data? And how can we play a role in kind of enabling them to use that data to get themselves a competitive advantage? And can we make money out of that? So I think this race for data it is absolutely an essential part of your kind of your strategic framework for 2024. If you don't have a plan for that right now, then you need to get one really quickly. The next race, though, is okay, we've got the data. How do we leverage it? Often the data is unstructured. It's not well integrated. So there's a race to structure, interrogate, and use that data. And so I think to do that, you really have to have a very good knowledge of the kind of the data startup ecosystem. And I know we've got some people on this call from very large agencies. I know some of you will do this in-house. I still think there are partners out there that could be relevant to expand what you're doing with your customer data. But one of the key blockers to all of this is the compute. So demand for compute is forecast to rise by 50 times in 4 years. We'll talk about some of the implications of that in a minute, because there are significant kind of side implications which are really raising their head. But that's a massive increase in the demand for compute. Like, I mean, it's unparalleled kind of in the history of humanity. And that means that there is a huge demand for NVIDIA's products, which is why NVIDIA is worth 1.5 trillion at the moment. The current wait time for an NVIDIA H100 GPU is 6 months. So that's kind of at standard pricing. You can pay a premium to get it faster. And even more kind of unknown than that is the current wait time for some networking hardware. Arista are one of kind of the plumbers, if you like, of data centers. They provide the networking software. They've got a 1-year waiting list for some of that kind of plumbing within data centers. So there's a real kind of a blockage here in terms of how much compute people want and how much compute is available and how fast that compute can come on stream. So the other strategy that you need to have, as well as saying how are we going to get data, is you need to have a plan of how are we going to get the compute to be able to leverage that data. So you absolutely need a plan for that as well. So let's talk about that ecosystem. So once you've got a plan for the data and once you've got the compute to use it, like how do you leverage it? And I think there are an amazing ecosystem of startups now that can help you with that. I'm just going to scratch the surface here with a few that I think you should definitely be familiar with and be talking to if you're not already. So in this kind of race to get, extract, and use, then Databricks is probably kind of the number one place for you to stop. So Databricks has got massive enterprise traction. It's working with 70% of the Fortune 100. It's particularly strong in very large scale e-commerce. They're at a run rate of 1.5 billion. They've got 10,000 global customers. They're at 50% revenue growth. So 50% revenue growth on 1.5 billion is pretty impressive. I've got a case study up, just a really simple one of how Burberry are working with Databricks, just on a kind of a very simple automatic AI generated labeling program. So massively decreasing the cost of being able to add new things to their catalog, and also increasing or decreasing the time that they can get things into their catalog. But in this world of kind of extract and use data, Databricks is a great place to start. Hugging Face, again, huge traction with enterprises. Did a round in August, which is only 6 months after their previous round. Their round valued them at 4.25 billion. There are 50,000 enterprise users. Then I would just say, if you're relatively new to the world of AI, particularly Gen AI, and you want to start getting a bit more hands-on, there's no better place to start playing than in Hugging Face. So it enables you to go and see what are the tasks that I want to deploy AI for? What are the models that people are using for those tasks? And there's even a sandbox that enables you to start playing with some of those models where they're open source. Now, I would say that some of the best production models aren't on Hugging Face. They might put like earlier models or less good models, so that they're not giving away the crown jewels. But in terms of just understanding how AI works, what different tasks AI is being deployed for, and kind of understanding how AI engineers are working, it takes a little bit of work to get into. But if you haven't played around with Hugging Face, I just really recommend it. And this, overall, what is Hugging Face for? This is kind of ML ops. So this is about kind of streamlining models to production, streamlining maintenance, streamlining monitoring. And this is a market that's kind of forecast to be worth at least kind of 16 billion on its own by 2030. And then the final example here is Anthropic. It raised 2 billion from Google last month. So this is focused on kind of enabling enterprises to leverage their data to create high quality, secure AI programs. These are the owners of Claude that you might have used, founded by a bunch of ex-Googlers. And I think the reason I mention them is obviously OpenAI are now working hard to get enterprises on board with them. But I think Anthropic from the beginning have said, if you're an enterprise and you have concerns about security, about intellectual property, we're the people you should come to and work with. And probably the place you've seen them most is in Zoom. So they provide the AI that powers the Zoom kind of assistant, Zoom IQ. So what are some of the tailwinds to this trend? So if our trend is we need more data, we need the compute to use it, and we need partners to help us use that data, well, a couple of things. So one is that 50 times increase in compute comes with a massive increase in power consumption. So this is a CSR disaster, really. L'Oreal are doing a keynote at CES next month exactly about this topic, that there are significant environmental downsides to AI and to the increase in data center power consumption. And then the second bit is obviously consumer and governmental fear. So we saw Italy ban ChatGPT. We saw the UK host an AI security conference 2 months ago. I think it was a bit of a joke, but it just shows the kind of the EU legislation came out last week. So we can see that the path to leveraging your data for your enterprise, has definitely got some obstacles in it that you need to be considering. And that issue of obstacles is definitely kind of one of the reasons that enterprises have been quite slow to adopt AI. And it's really interesting. In Black Crow and then in the training consulting work that I do, I work with a mixture of kind of mid-sized companies and enterprises. And it's absolutely fascinating to see the range of behaviors in enterprises. So you have some enterprises who were quite quick to say, in these particular situations, you can use AI, or you can have a sandbox here that you can use AI for. And there are other enterprises just cut access to all Gen AI tools. So it's very hard to create a revised business strategy that incorporates Gen AI if you don't even have access to, for example, ChatGPT. And this has been driven by security concerns, by IT infrastructure policies, and then from a use case perspective, a perception that LLM delivery is not of a high enough quality. And so I think enterprises have been much slower than the mid-sized businesses that I work with at using Gen AI. And that, I think, is going to change in 2024. Why is it going to change in 2024? Because enterprises are figuring out how to create the policies that enable them to use it and sort out the IT infrastructure. There's going to be a much more palatable and efficient partner ecosystem. So people who are better equipped to work with enterprises that assuage some of these fears. And there will just be better enterprise tools that deliver better use case results that will mean that enterprises want to solve these problems because they can see the financial benefits of doing so. So when we think about those risks that enterprises perceive, it's a great survey from April this year. This is from McKinsey. So we can see, what are the issues? What are the barriers to entry for enterprises? It's large-scale enterprises. So you can see inaccuracy, cybersecurity, intellectual property infringement are the top three. So these are significant problems, and absolutely we see that enterprises have been bothered by these things. But we've got to balance this against the incentive to take advantage of what Gen AI offers. And I just think we're on that tipping point on the seesaw where the benefits are now outweighing some of those risks that they see. And this is one of my favorite charts of 2023. I'll probably have to find a new one in 2024. But this was done by McKinsey earlier in the year. And I love it when a management consultancy admits that they may have been wrong. And what McKinsey did was compare their estimate of when specific tasks would become automated to a reasonable degree by AI. And they looked at the report they did in 2017, which is the gray and the black dots. And then they looked at what they thought, and this was earlier this year, I think it was in April as well, which is the blue dots. So just to give you an example, creativity with lots of people from marketing agencies here. Look at creative tasks. So before, McKinsey estimated in 2017 that AI would only begin to disrupt creative tasks in 2030 at a median level, so not to a very high quality. And the middle of the range was like 2038. And to do this with high quality, the kind of output that large companies need and that agencies would be expected to produce, that would really only start happening in 2037. And the mid-range is like 2047, 2048, something like that. Then they said, yeah, sorry, this is all completely wrong. We actually think that now, if we look at the blue dot for creativity, that's happening now. So it's way earlier than we thought. And in terms of top quartile performance, we think that will start in about 2026. And I'd almost guarantee if McKinsey went back and redid this today, that dark blue dot would start next year. Because I think that we can already see in terms of some creative tasks, which we'll talk about later, top quartile performance is already becoming, if not visible, identifiable how we're going to get there in terms of the next generation of LLM performance. And so essentially what we can see, Gen AI has fundamentally changed the timing with which we think AI will disrupt major buckets of tasks in the workforce, which is kind of obvious, but it's really useful to remember. OpenAI only launched on November the 30th, or ChatGPT only launched on November the 30th, 2023. So we've had just a year of kind of the vanguard of Gen AI. And already we can see that we've knocked decades, if not tens of decades, off our forecasts of when AI will disrupt the workplace. And enterprises have just been slow to cope with the speed at which AI is disrupting hands-on tasks in the workforce. So we've done a kind of a maturity model, which we use with our enterprise clients to try and identify kind of where they are. So I think one way of thinking about that maturity in organizations, so if you're someone who's responsible for creating AI change, this is a kind of a useful model to use. So we think about it in 5 different buckets. So strategy, how integrated is AI in the org? People, so what knowledge do they have? Data organization, so how well structured is your data? Tech stack, so is your tech stack going to enable you to leverage Gen AI? And then procedure and processes. So do you have a playbook for how AI should work in your organization, both at an enterprise security level and a personal privacy level as well? And what we can find is when we speak to most enterprises, they're definitely kind of at the lower end of these adoption curves, but seeking to move into kind of buckets 3 and 4. This is the kind of thing you're interested in. We run this survey for a very modest fee, and we'll give you some interesting results that can help you kind of identify where you are and where you need to go. So why else will enterprises kind of move along that adoption curve in 2024? Well, one will be that it'll become more accessible. So improvements in GPUs and also improvements in the efficiency of algorithms. So we already saw in the last 2 weeks a number of open source models be released, including one from Mistral, that are kind of claiming to replicate ChatGPT 3.5 type performance in an open source context with significantly lower compute. So I 100% believe in this trend. So compute costs per token will reduce by 75% over the next 3 years, and that might even be an underestimate. We might even be able to do better than that. We can see in the kind of the OpenAI developer day a couple of months ago that their launch of ChatGPT Turbo said that it will be 3 times cheaper for developers. And again, answering one of those other issues we mentioned earlier, protect customers against copyright lawsuits. So we can see in reality, this stuff is actually how that kind of prediction is already coming true. Another reason that enterprises will start to more quickly adopt Gen AI is sampling. So Microsoft are already rolling out co-pilots. Mine actually turned up today for free, hadn't even sort of paid for it. And the more that people in enterprises are exposed to the benefits of Gen AI, then clearly the more likely they are to start making a larger part of that strategy just through hands-on personal experience. And we can see the major players are kind of prepared to subsidize this. So Microsoft's taking around a $20 a month loss on GitHub on a per co-pilot user. So a lot of enterprise money is being spent to effectively get people to try Gen AI in the belief that they will then make it a bigger strategic priority and ultimately spend that money back with players like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. And then I think the final reason that we think that enterprises will become much more strategic with their use of Gen AI is they'll just be enterprise-focused tools. So when we think about kind of the launch of ChatGPT, it wasn't really created for the use of large enterprises, hence why it was banned by many of them. But in the last 12 months, as we've seen many new VC funded launches in this area, we can see some of them are doing a really good job at making themselves useful, palatable, and relevant to enterprises. So one example is Writer. I know a few people at the company, so raised another 100 million in September, interestingly from people like Accenture. So it is a real enterprise focus. It's got a lot of early adopter enterprise clients, people like Adobe. And then if you look at this a kind of sales slide of why it's a useful person to work with an enterprise, you can see all of that list of concerns that I mentioned earlier. It ticks off, so meets the compliance of secure organization, protects your data, builds brand trust and loyalty, eliminates kind of hallucinations. Now this is obviously absolutely targeted at large scale enterprise users. And that's why they've been successful at getting those large scale enterprise users on board. So as that ecosystem grows and they offer products, which Writer does, that serve enterprises well, save them time, save them money. There's a great case study here from Carter and Writer about how they're using it to create blogs. Now, this is the more that there are relevant tools that are really worth getting, and the more that those tools satisfy the needs of the IT teams in those enterprises, the more adoption will happen. And I think that'll become an avalanche. I'm going to skip through this just in the interest of time. And we can see something similar here with his Octopus Energy case study, where the CEO, Greg Jackson, you can see in this picture with the lovely former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson looking as disheveled as normal. AI, he said, is doing the work of 250 people, and the data of emails that were created by AI were delivering 80% customer satisfaction versus 65% achieved by the skilled, trained people. Now, clearly it's a really specific set of use cases, and clearly they've spent time creating the model, fine-tuning it and testing it. But that is a great kind of practical in-market case study of how enterprises are seeing significant value from Gen AI, and therefore they'll be prepared to change their policies in order to be able to adopt it. We just turn some lights on here because it suddenly got very dark. Trend 3 is about the impact of AI on e-commerce. So the last 2 years have seen massive deprecation of third-party data by Apple, and next year it will be by Google. And the entire e-commerce ecosystem was predicated on third-party data. And marketers have been really slow to understand, especially in the lower funnel, how destructive this has been to them. The net result of that is vast amounts of money have been destroyed in the DTC and e-commerce world. So clearly there was a bit of a gold rush there, and there was a bit of overinvestment, and clearly some of the valuations were probably too high. And we can see one example on the right-hand side. I don't think we've got anyone from Unilever here, but apologies if you are. Unilever have taken a bath of about $900 million on Dollar Shave Club, which they bought for $1 billion and have sold for less than 100 million valuation. So, you know, it's a pretty disastrous bit of value destruction. And obviously the reason for that was not necessarily just the change to third-party data, but we can definitely see that 2024 is when I think the corner is being turned by DTC companies using both predictive and Gen AI to significantly improve the performance of their marketing ROAS. So, you know, why do we think that? Well, first of all, most big brands have kind of figured out that first-party data is an absolute necessity, and they've identified kind of the management solutions that they need. So moving from client-side tagging of users to server-side tagging of users. Client-side tagging of users obviously not really doable anymore. Server-side tagging of users doable now. Now, clearly that changes how the ecosystem works, but it opens new doors to the return of effective lower funnel marketing, and massive e-commerce optimization with a hugely burgeoning startup ecosystem. So I'll give you a few examples. Obviously, I'm going to put in a bit of a plug for my my old company, which I am a shareholder in. So Black Crow leverages that first party data across paid and owned. I'll just give you a few examples. So, and maybe the story here is kind of instructive as to what's happening in this marketplace. So we originally launched just to kind of be the AI solution and leveraging clients' data to effectively make their marketing more efficient in a number of different ways. And then we realized that without a really good supply of first party data, it's going to be really hard to make that AI work for the number of clients we wanted it to work for. So then we started helping people set up and access their first party data. So now Black Crow has two kind of different components to it. One is help you get your first party data as an e-commerce company. And then secondly, leverage that in AI to help you optimize your performance. So that could be optimizing Klaviyo or other messaging performance, could be optimizing prospecting by making your Facebook prospecting more efficient. And in the future, it could be optimizing new use cases like LTV, for example. And so what we can see in the clients that we work with, we've got one on screen, Bush Balm, Facebook revenue increased by 62% by leveraging first party data and then pushing that information into Facebook to make Facebook more efficient. But that's one of many. There is a huge growth in e-commerce startups who are all predicated on first party data. Another is Triple Whale. So Triple Whale has done very, very well in the last 2 years. It uses first party data to help you understand your channels and optimize your campaigns. Really, really simply, so you're not kind of buried in the horrible new Google Analytics. Instead, you can have it in a nice, attractive dashboard. And Polar is using first-party data to enable you to estimate lifetime value. So when we think about e-commerce, e-commerce basically rarely makes money on its first sale. So you need to understand, I'm going to get more than one sale out of this customer. And if you can understand that, you can significantly improve your overall marketing payback and your profitability as a business overall. And so Polar helps you to identify who are your profitable customers and can you predict who your profitable customers might be when you're doing your marketing to them. So this ecosystem is really, really powerful at driving. Now, we're not talking about 5%, 10%, 15% improvements in ROAS. We're talking about 50, 100, 150% improvements in ROAS. And that is an absolute game changer to the whole sector of e-commerce and DTC. Another one small other example that came up recently, just raised some money, Julius. And so one issue for many marketers, not just in DTC, is it's really hard to identify your performance and interrogate your data that's contained in lots of different platforms. So this is interrogating your kind of your performance data via plain text chat. So you can see an example up here, kind of a chat GPT type interface. So making your data more accessible is also going to be hugely helpful to marketers everywhere. So those are the three big trends. I'm going to shoot through two smaller ones quite quickly. So our fourth trend is about kind of the supercharged creator economy. Clearly, so I know we've got some people here in comms or I think some from PR agencies. You know the value of influencers, but also know maybe some of the kind of the hassle and headaches of working with influencers, especially from a kind of a creative production perspective. Now, what we can see happening is a massive opportunity for that creator economy to leverage better and easier production tools. And I think this has profound implications for agency business models as well, because the more that people can create content on their own via plain text commands, it's going to be harder for agencies to justify some of the production budgets or some of the versioning work that they do. So I can see quite big shifts in business models there. So one example that's happening now, so I don't know if anyone uses Photo Room. Photo Room is an amazing business. For those of you who don't know it, I'll see if this video plays. Yeah, it just enables you in an app to isolate a background, change the background, so effectively do cutouts. So if you think back to the old days of Adobe Photoshop, going all the way back to my magazine production days, doing the cutout of that model and her hair, that would be like a 3 or 4 hour task. And even then it would probably not be very good. Now we can do it in a click of a mouse. They've only taken on $1 million of investment and they've got to 50 million AAR. So that just shows you the kind of the value of these production tools. And what if we play that forward, what happens next? Now, I think absolutely Gen AI text to video will be a reality for mass consumers in 2024. I think I first wrote about this 6 weeks ago, and already that trend is pretty much coming true. Already it's difficult to think a year ahead in Gen AI because things happen so fast. So we've seen that with the launch of Runway Gen 2. So a quick video here of these are all created with text to video prompts. And then just 10 days ago, I've been on holiday for the last couple of weeks, so I'm still catching up. Pika 1.0 was released on November the 28th, which is another unbelievably powerful text to video tool. It's still not on general release. You have to sign up for the waiting list, on which I am still in, but there's some amazing examples that have been put up by people who do have access to it. So this example was someone who took Forrest Gump and then just using text commands was able to replace Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks, with a raccoon's head and then push that forward into every scene of Forrest Gump, where instead of it being Tom Hanks, it was an animated raccoon using only text to video prompts. Like, it's unbelievably powerful. So when we see this type of really simple to use text to video prompts, I have no question that this is going to be available to anyone in 2024. Again, this is really profound in terms of who can create high quality video content, how much time it takes to create that high quality video content. And for the people who make money by creating high video quality content now, what does that mean for you? I think that's a really, really profound change for many marketers and many agencies in particular. And our final trend is about kind of monetization. So the other issue with influencers is found some ways of monetizing, but not perfect, is what most of them would say. But I think there'll be an acceleration of the trend to enable creators and brands to monetize commerce within social platforms using Gen AI. So we can see that with the launch of Grok, this is Elon's vision to effectively to create like WeChat for the West. So I've been talking about WeChat. I think I went to China in 2011 or 12 and everyone was just using WeChat. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is going to come to the West. It's going to change everything. Obviously, nothing like it has actually arrived. If you've never played with it, go and watch some videos. It's phenomenal. But his vision is effectively to create WeChat for the West, and that is all about embedding commerce within social platforms. And then we can see a kind of other Gen AI tools appearing to help us do that, like ChatGPT stores. So we can see there's already over 10,000 GPTs that have been built for the potential OpenAI store. Okay, so kind of 3 big bets for 2024. 1, the race for data and the compute to use it. 2, Gen AI traction in enterprises truly begins. 3, an e-commerce reboot driven by first-party data and AI. 4, kind of consumerization of advanced production capabilities in content. And 5, the acceleration of the commercialization of social platforms and the integration of commercial opportunities within those social platforms. Quick mention of what we do. So we've got a lot of people here from agencies and marketing teams. So just overall, kind of how can Edifai potentially help you? So we've got 3 different program types. So we've got one which is like a leadership program to help you understand AI, make plans for AI, integrate it into what you do as a strategic concept. We've got some very hands-on programs, which are kind of man and machine, which is really learning how to use AI and how to implement it in your organization. we have a bunch of much smaller kind of lab type programs, which are hands-on and team-based. We've got some amazing collaborators. We've got some like incredible practitioners in AI. We're working on a few programs with some big agencies and some big global enterprises at the moment, using a lot of these collaborators, and some of them are, no, to be honest, I feel kind of privileged to work with some of them. They're phenomenal. And if you're interested in getting started and having a chat with us, some obvious places to start would be our AI for Leaders Bootcamp. We've got an AI and Marketing Mini Lab. We've got an AI for Comms Mini Lab. So these are half-day sessions to kind of get the ball rolling without a big commitment. And we also do AI keynotes, so talking about big trends in AI, the type that you've seen today. So, Nick, I don't know if you wanted to say any more about that before we wrap up.
No, I mean, I've dropped a link into the chat. If anyone is interested in one of our programs or finding out a little bit more about some of the transformative work in AI that we're doing, please just fill that out, and a member of the team will get in contact with you. But whether you are looking for something as short as 45 minutes at your next sort of company conference or all hands, or a half-day mini lab just to get a team on board, or something a bit bigger and more transformational, we still have a suite of programs to help cover that. So we've lost your audio now.
If anyone has any questions, we've got a few minutes. We can answer any questions. Very happy to take them. If you need to jump off and grab your lunch or your breakfast, thank you very much for joining. But if you'd like to ask some questions, very happy to answer any.
Yeah, we have nothing that's come through in the Q&A yet, but we will stick around for a couple of minutes to see if there is any. Obviously, thank you, Niall. It was a whistle bang sort of tour of loads of stuff. I think that we're expecting to see. I imagine a lot of these announcements probably going to come out at CES in about a month's time. So it'll be a very interesting space to watch.
Thanks, Sonia.
Good question here.
Yeah.
Given how broad AI is, particularly for marketing, what's the best way to get started for a team who wants to use AI but isn't really sure what to do? Buy one of our programs?
Yeah, I think the Marketing Mini Lab would be a great place to start.
No, would be a great place to start on that.
So if I think about it from my own personal usage, the most obvious place to start is kind of this is the simplest things, just to get the ball rolling. So ChatGPT, get a premium subscription to ChatGPT, it's $20. I'm sure you can put it on expenses. And some simple use cases for ChatGPT is to use it as like a brainstorming partner as a marketer. So if you wanted to come up with a content plan, so get suggestions for like, this is our target market, this is who our company is. They give me 5 suggestions for blog posts, stuff like that. So really, is it going to give you the perfect answer? No. Another example I use it for is like, if I need to generate a lot of landing pages, just put in the information, see if it can come up with some landing page copy. Again, it's not going to give you the answer, but it's going to give you some good ideas that can definitely save you time. Even sort of medium form content like small articles definitely can help with that. And one top tip I would actually give you, which is why I recommend GPT-4 with web browsing enabled. If you have, say, 10 blog posts already, if you say to ChatGPT, here's some blog posts I've already written, type in the URLs, and then say, I'd like to write 5 more blog posts, but about these subjects, can you write the first draft for me? Actually, it does a really decent job there. So I think content creation as a brainstorming partner, that's a really easy place to get started.
Brilliant. Another question here from Jakob. So outside of marketing, where do you see the enterprise challenges? What about the IP lawsuits racking up against all these Gen AI companies?
Yeah, look, I think the top 2 by miles are cybersecurity and an IP. So I think we mentioned one of them, which is OpenAI is already like offering to indemnify enterprise users for those copyright infringements. So I think you're going to see that kind of stuff happen more generally, which will then enable enterprises to use it. And they're just going to be left carrying the bag. And they've got enough money to go away and settle with people Who knows how the legal process will play out. But I think the only other kind of big example I can think of this, or maybe two. So if you think about Google and the news players, ultimately in most markets, Google got away with kind of effectively monetizing other people's content by leveraging the laws of that country. In some markets, it didn't, like Australia, where it had to pay money into a fund for the news providers. And then you saw news providers kind of take the option to opt in or out. So I imagine it will be a patchwork of settlements and getting away with it. And I guess the other example might be Uber, who fundamentally break laws in a lot of countries in how they set up and how they did it. And again, it was a combination of settlements, custom agreements, and getting away with it. So when we think about how much money the big LLM owners have, they've got massive legal power and large pockets. So I think they're just going to say, yeah, we'll break it and we'll fix it as we go. That I think is probably what's going to happen.
Right. Any other questions from anyone here in the audience, or any trends that you're interested in watching next year, or things that you're spotting maybe closer to your industry or to your function?
Any serious contenders from other parts of the world than the USA? Yeah, so I would think the most obvious one is China. So China is massively investing in AI, and because of kind of the recent, I guess, kind of disentanglement between the West and China, we talk less about the business opportunities in China than we used to. And so therefore we maybe spend a bit less time looking at trends that are happening in China. But there's a number of very sophisticated LLMs that have already been launched from China, and kind of claims of performance equal to or greater than certainly ChatGPT 3.5. Obviously, the US is doing its best to try and undermine that by banning the export of certain chip types, more advanced chip types. So NVIDIA, for example, had to cancel a bunch of orders that it was planning to send to China because of legislation that the US passed. So there's a battle there, but I'd say China for sure. And then in Europe, there are a couple of key players. So Mistral just raised a shit ton of money this week and launched, or last week, and launched their new latest LLM, which was equal to or greater than 3.5, and they think they're going to get to 4. So that's from out of France. Hugging Face also set up from France, although I think primarily not as much in France. So I think, yeah, there are other countries, but obviously if you look at both where are the developers and where is the capital to put into the companies, the deepest market by miles is the US, and there'll be there'll be China, there'll be the US, and there'll be probably, like there is at the moment, a smaller scale of that in Europe and Southeast Asia.
Brilliant. I think that probably brings us pretty much to time. So just once again, thank you for everyone for coming along today. We wish you an amazing festive break and look forward to checking back in with you in the new year with another sequence of these fantastic webinars we've been holding. So thank you again, Niall, for being here and for giving us those big and small bets. And thank you everyone for attending. Have a wonderful break. Bye for now.